So this is the timekeeping. It's basically the beating heart of the clock. And as I mentioned before, these two red pieces here are responsible for the timekeeping. In order to explain it, I'm going to go ahead and focus in on this one first. So imagine that I just had a clock using this one red piece. A ball would just go rolling down this set of track, and when it gets to the bottom, it would cause the next ball to be released, which I guess is okay in some ways, but it won't be that accurate. And the reason why is because when this ball goes ahead and triggers it, there's a chance that the next ball will either be like this or like this. And the thing is, it takes different amounts of time to release that ball. And also there's going to be more friction because of all these balls up here pushing up against it. And in general, the main reason why this isn't the best setup is because there are so many different variables over here that can affect the accuracy. Most significant ones being these two different positions like this, and the friction. This is where the second part comes into play. So to explain, I'm just going to go ahead and start the clock. And what you may notice is that once this moving ball comes down and hits the second part, causing this ball to be released, it pretty much always releases that ball in the same way because there's always just one ball over there. And also, it doesn't have to deal with the friction that comes from all of these balls pushing down. So since the time it takes for that ball to be released and roll down this track and trigger the next ball is pretty much constant, that's basically what drives the timekeeping here. And just to make things a little easier, since this part is directly responsible for timekeeping, I'm going to call it the primary escapement. And as you'll see soon, this part plays only a supportive role, so I'm going to call it the secondary escapement. And now that I've said all these things, I'm going to explain how the primary and secondary escapement work in conjunction with each other. So if I go ahead and start this clock, you can see that this ball is just going to roll down and it's going to release that one, like so. But there's a problem because when this ball comes down, there's no ball to be released anymore. And this is what happens if the primary escapement is just, this one is just working alone. So I'm just going to start it again, and this time we'll see how the secondary escapement plays its role. So go ahead and start it. And once that ball releases it, okay, I can pause that right there. So the role of the secondary escapement is to release a ball and replace the one that was lost, so that by the time, I'm just going to go ahead and cause it to be released. There we go. So that by the time this ball rolls all the way down and reaches that point, there's a ball to be released again. So as you can see, it can release the new ball. And of course this cycle can just continue, as you can see. Now, remember when I said that the secondary escapement isn't very accurate at timekeeping? Well, it doesn't really matter in this setup because the primary escapement is the part responsible for timekeeping. And to explain, I will start the clock once more. And I will pause it in the exact same place that I paused earlier, so right about now. Okay, and I don't really need this ball, so I'm just going to go ahead and take it out. So it takes several seconds for this ball to roll all the way down that set of track, right? Well, so long as the secondary escapement releases the ball and replaces the one that was lost within those several seconds, then the primary escapement will just continue to function as normal and therefore maintain the timekeeping as normal. Below the timekeeping, there's this green lever here which counts the number of seconds that have passed by. And since it's in 4-second intervals, that means that the time it takes for this ball to be released, to roll down this track, and to release the next ball also has to be 4 seconds. However, without this black knob over here, the time it takes for the ball to do all of that is more than 4 seconds long. So to adjust this, I simply have to unscrew this knob by turning it counterclockwise and moving it down this way until it takes exactly 4 seconds for the ball to go down. And to help with this calibration process, on this track, there are these vertical lines to help indicate how far down this calibrator knob has been moved. That probably seemed like a boring thing to mention, but there's actually something interesting that I want to point out. So imagine that these are the calibration lines on the track, and this is the calibrator itself. Now I want to be able to fine-tune the position of the calibrator on a track, so one way to do this is to just add more lines, right? But I can actually do better than that. So right now, I can align the front of the calibrator with these calibration lines, and that'll just give me 5 ways, right? But I can also align the back of the calibrator with the line, and that gives me an additional 5 ways. In fact, I'll go ahead and mark them now. Therefore, by using both the front and the back of the calibrator, I'm able to double the number of positions of alignment. And this is useful because it allows me to better fine-tune the position of the calibrator on the track. And just in case you were wondering, I recorded some data to try to determine the accuracy of the clock's timekeeping. So what I did was I started the clock, and at the same time that I started the clock, I started a stopwatch on my phone. And once the clock had reached a certain time, I recorded what the stopwatch said. And you can tell that the clock's time and the stopwatch's time are not exact. There's clearly some discrepancy there. So cali means calibrator, and it means that I was adjusting the calibrator on the timekeeping to try to make the clock's time match up with the stopwatch's time. After this calibration adjustment, I just went ahead and collected a whole line of data just to see if I could see a pattern in the results. I did in fact notice a pattern, but let me first explain why the data is collected in triplets. What happened is when I press the stop button on the stopwatch, I can't guarantee that I'll press it at the exact moment that I'm supposed to. So for each trial, I take 3 data points to try to smooth things out. And what that means is that for each run of the clock, I record the stopwatch time when the clock reads 9 minutes and 52 seconds, and I record the stopwatch time 4 seconds later when the clock reads 9 minutes and 56 seconds, and then I record the stopwatch time 4 seconds after that when the clock reads 10 minutes and 0 seconds. Ditto just means that the triplet of clock times for that trial is the same as the triplet of clock times for the previous trial. And also you'll notice that I say clock moved twice over here. I try to minimize the number of times the clock was moved around just because a table might have different inclines in different areas which can affect the timekeeping, but nevertheless I ended up moving the clock twice just while I was collecting the data, so I noted it over here. Oh, and one more thing. So the first 3 rows of data are actually not a triplet. That was just me experimenting around, playing around a little bit before I really got down to systematic data collection. Now the pattern that I noticed overall was that the clock was essentially becoming faster and faster. And what that means is that it was reaching the clock times listed in the left column faster, so that means that the actual time readout became smaller and smaller over time. So I think the reason why the clock was getting faster was probably due to the fact that as I handled the steel balls, I was depositing more and more oils from my hand onto the steel balls, and this was lubricating them, allowing them to pass through the track faster. But I don't know for sure. I would have to do more experimentation to find out why the clock was gradually becoming faster.